Excellent, perfect. Thank you for having me. I would like to first take this moment also to acknowledge that I'm delivering this presentation from the city of Port Coquitlam, which is the unceded traditional and ancestral territories of the Coquitlam First Nation, which lies within the shared territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, Musqueam, Squamish, and Stolo nations. To start, I just want to give you a brief update of who Zero Waste is. So what the Zero Waste International Alliance is, who Zero Waste Canada is, who I am, just so you kind of know a reference point of where this information is coming from. So again, my name is Jamie Kaminsky. I also not just the president of Zero Waste, HSR Zero Waste. I'm also on the board of the Zero Waste International Alliance. I'm the chair of the Zero Waste Definitions Working Group, the chair of the Zero Waste Hierarchy Working Group, and director of Zero Waste Canada. And this presentation, for the purpose of this presentation, I'll be delivering it on behalf of Zero Waste Canada as a board member. So Zero Waste International Alliance, so who are they? The Zero Waste International Alliance is an international network of zero waste and resource management professionals, scientists, engineers, policy advisors, educators, and equally of active citizens coming together to inform the Zero Waste International Alliance network regarding the challenges faced in their communities. Zero Waste Canada is the Canadian national affiliate of the Zero Waste International Alliance, with the mandate of developing, expanding, and implementing the Alliance's work here in Canada. So a lot of work that we do involves communities. So we work with communities to address their issues around waste and how the waste is being managed. We also work with businesses to help them understand how they're managing their waste and develop policies for businesses to be able to do better with their waste and how it's being managed as well. And of course, government. So we work with local and international governments to be able to discuss with them all the issues of, for instance, international export of waste, burning of waste, things like that, and how they can better manage their resources to be able to avoid those things. So some of the policies that have been created by the International Alliance include the vision and mission statement of the International Alliance, which is a just world of vibrant, resilient, zero-waste communities in harmony with nature. And their mission is to work together as a global community to drive systemic change towards zero waste using environmental and social justice principles. So typically when people think of zero waste, we often run across people don't quite see the words social justice or global community in zero waste, but really this is the heart and soul of what zero waste is all about. It's really about community, and it's about social justice and environmental justice. So the definition of zero waste is very important. It's one of the foundations of zero waste and what the Zero Waste International Alliance builds most of its policies around, or all of its policies around, I would say. And the definition of zero waste is the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials without burning and with no discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. So this is very dear to the International Alliance, and we follow it quite sternly when we're developing policies. One of the policies that comes from this is the zero waste hierarchy. So the zero waste hierarchy on the right side of the screen here, you can see that it shows a rethink, redesign, reduce, reuse, and then we have recycling, composting, material recovery, and residuals management, and then an unacceptable section. So it's important to understand that the top three layers of this hierarchy is really where most of the zero waste action is. So once it gets into recycling and composting, now you're just trying to kind of mitigate the damages of wasting materials and the materials that you have wasted already. So you're trying to reincorporate them back into the system somehow. But when we're really looking at policies for zero waste, we really want to strive to be able to avoid having to discard materials altogether. So even avoid recycling and composting through reduction or reuse of materials and products. And then when we get to the unacceptable section, we're talking about a lot of destructive disposal, reincorporating toxic materials back into products. That's not a good thing. So we're really trying to avoid different policies that would drive wasting of materials or the increase of toxicity in materials, which is against zero waste principles. So why? So why the Zero Waste International Alliance? Why Zero Waste Canada? Why all this talk around zero waste? What are we here for? So what does that look like? Well, in Canada, our diversion rate, so from what we throw out into the waste stream, so what goes to landfill or incinerators versus what we recycle or compost, we're at about 27%. So that's, I think, is generous because that was back in 2016. So that shows that we have a long way to go. The global diversion rate is around 19%, which was calculated by the World Bank in 2018. So we are throwing out a massive amount of resources on a regular basis. So we have a picture here that shows an image of, a regular city garbage can. And there's only really a few places where that material is going to go. So, if it falls over and falls on the ground and gets washed into the waterways, ends up in our oceans, it can get picked up by a truck and sent to a landfill where it gets buried and dumped into a big pile, or it will potentially get burned, in which case the ash will end up going to a landfill anyways, and the toxic emissions will go into the air for us to breathe in. So really, there really is no such thing as a way, we always say. So right now we have, unfortunately, we're in a series of ecological overshoot. So that means that we're actually harvesting more resources than our planet can actually regenerate on its own. So every year we get further and further into ecological overshoot, and eventually it just won't be, we won't be able to continue that process. So this graph here shows the consumption patterns of various areas around the world. So what it's showing here is that if here in Canada, or North America and Canada, if the entire world were to consume at the rate that we're consuming right now, or abusing our resources, we would need about 2 to 4 planets to live on. To be able to sustain that pattern of consumption. So we already know that developing nations are following our trajectory, so they are starting to consume more and more as we are, and so we are closely going to reach those numbers all across the globe. So what's been happening? What's in the news? So what's going on with around the world? So a lot of places, which is great, have been pushing back. So Philippines in 2013, they decided, you know what, hey, we're getting a lot of garbage from a lot of places that are just using us as dumping grounds, and they're pushing back and asking different nations to take back their waste. So that's created a huge uproar in the recycling industry because a lot of recycling was just simply being cherry picked for the good quality materials, and the rest was getting dumped into other nations, which is a practice that we definitely don't support. So when we look at it in terms of numbers, we're not only looking at an environmental issue, we're also looking at an economic issue. And with economic issues comes opportunity, obviously. So in 2019, the European Union argued that banning single-use plastics would address 70% of marine litter, avoiding environmental damages that would otherwise cost the European Union 22 billion European dollars, so euros, by 2030. In 2018, the City of Vancouver Council approved a single-use items reduction strategy, arguing that Vancouver taxpayers were paying $2.5 million per year for the collection of single-use items from public waste bins and from the collection of ground litter. In 2019, our Prime Minister of Canada announced a similar single-use plastics ban as the European Union, arguing that Canadians currently throw away $8 billion worth of plastic material every single year, and that by recycling or reusing these plastics, Canada could reduce pollution, generate billions of dollars in revenue, and in the process create approximately 42,000 jobs. Globally, it is estimated that 95% of plastic packaging material value is lost to global economy each year, worth anywhere between 80 to 120 billion US dollars. So that's a lot of opportunity when it comes to avoiding wasting into an industry. So what have we been doing about it? So globally, what's been happening? So we already know it hasn't been working that well, but what have we been doing with it? So we want to first talk about the waste berg. So We like to show this image because the wasteberg shows you that for every 1 ton of waste that a consumer puts to the curb, so you and I throw out into the garbage bin or recycling bin or wherever we're getting rid of it, there's been 71 tons of waste that's been generated through the production cycle. So the cycle of extracting the waste, transporting it, refinery, processing, production, distribution, stocking, purchasing. Every single area of production generates waste, and the further back we go, the more toxic the waste becomes. So through extraction being one of the more toxic and refining being more of the toxic processes, to just plain processing and production, which is a huge wasting activity. So to do that, we try to recycle. We try to recycle the best we can, but we know if I recycle my pop bottle, there's been 71 pop bottles basically that's worth of material that's been wasted before I try and recycle the pop bottle I have in my hand. We also know from global experience and in the news that everything we put in the recycle bin doesn't always get recycled. It's a very very finicky process, and it has to be done right. Recycling, for it to work, needs to be done properly. So it has to be clean, has to be source separated, and it has to have markets to work. So for instance, if you're not buying materials with recycled content, how do you expect your materials that you send to the recycling bin to be recycled if there's no market for it? So that's a big issue. If you're not buying 100% recycled paper or cardboard or plastics, chances are the materials that you send in are going to have a hard time making it to market. So what happens if it doesn't get recycled or composted? Well, what's happening right now is usually if it's not getting recycled or composted, it's either going to landfill or it's being burned in an incinerator. So some people think, oh, that's not so bad. Incinerators create energy, they heat homes. But I'm going to tell you now that the foundation of the Zero Waste International Alliance was to fight against incineration because of the amount of damage that they do cause. So I'll go through a short list, try and be brief on this, but the first thing is that the ash. So incinerators create two types of ash, a bottom ash and a top ash. So the top ash is the ash that comes from the scrubbers. So when there's a filter in place to filter out all the toxins that would be created from superheating all different types of materials, anything that those filters capture, so anything that doesn't get released into the atmosphere and into the environment gets put into an ash. That ash then has to be disposed of somehow. So it's usually taken to a hazardous waste landfill. And we know that all landfills are not impermeable, so they all eventually leak. So I don't think there's been a landfill that hasn't actually leaked after a certain period of time. So that's a problem. Then we have the emissions. So we were mentioning the toxic emissions. There's no filter out there that can filter out all toxic emissions. And one of the issues is that many of these toxins are forever toxins. So they're bioaccumulative, which means that they stay in the environment, and no matter how small of material or particle size it is, it just keeps accumulating and accumulating. It lands on the ground, it gets washed into the rivers, into the oceans, and it just constantly accumulates there. Very hard to track, very hard to trace. They're now finding it in, for instance, eggs of chickens. They're finding it in breast milk of women, mercury. So it's a very big issue, these forever toxins. So we want to try to avoid the dispersal of them, which burning it and sending it into the air really does not avoid the dispersal of toxins. Then we look at energy. So if we're using energy to create a product, the amount of energy you actually get from burning that product is very insignificant. It's a very small amount compared to all the energy of production that goes into making that product. So from the extraction to the transportation to the distribution, all of that takes energy and takes resources. And when you burn it, you get a very small fraction of that back. When we talk about social justice, we want to talk about these incinerators are usually built in areas with lower income or income of minority, or sorry, areas where there's minority population, and they're suffering the toxins of those facilities. Then we have burning of resources. So zero waste. It doesn't make sense to actually burn resources when we're trying to conserve them. So it goes completely against that. It also creates demand for waste. So a lot of these incinerators, the promotion is that we hook them up, we hook up the surrounding communities to all this, the heat, the district heating, so that way they can heat homes, they can provide electricity to homes. And what that ends up doing is it ends up locking those communities into that incinerator and essentially locking them into needing to burn waste to now power their homes and create heat for their homes. So it's quite a bad situation when it comes to the cost of incinerator being so high and all the toxins that come with it. And then again, it competes with materials for recycling. So no one wants to say, you'll hear that it doesn't, but the fact is that the materials that are best for burning are clean plastics that are great for recycling, clean woods that are great for recycling, and also the papers and things like that. So that's all good. Incinerators like to have it all mixed up in a nice cocktail, but those are the materials that they're looking for, is those high value materials that would also be really good for either composting or recycling. So what do we do? So we have a little bit of analogy for zero waste, and it comes in the form of this. So we asked everyone a question of, you come home from vacation and you left the tap on and your house is flooding because the sink is clogged. So what's the first thing that you would normally do? Would you go rush out and grab the broom and start mopping up the water while the tap is still running, or would you turn off the tap? And we always say it's a rhetorical question because we're pretty sure that everybody would first turn off the tap before cleaning up the mess. And that's kind of what zero waste is all about. We're all about looking at how to turn off that tap, how to prevent the waste before it becomes waste. So I'm going to update you on a few things that's been going on this year. So what the Zero Waste International Alliance has been up to and what Zero Waste Canada has been up to. So this year we are updating the zero waste hierarchy. There's a big push right now for the processing of plastics for recycling, and the process, or plastics to plastics, and the chemical processing of plastics to plastics, and the chemical processing of plastics to fuel. So there's a more of a push of chemical processing of plastics to fuel, which is right for the Zero Waste International Alliance, right in the area of the unacceptable section. So that's going to be included for sure in the unacceptable section, because processing chemicals or chemically processing plastics just to burn it, in our view, is an extreme waste of resources. And we're not quite sure where we're going to put chemical processing of plastics to plastics yet, because we're still unsure of the toxins and hazardous materials that are created throughout that process. So we're just looking into that. So we always want to say that zero waste, not to be intimidated by the term zero waste or the number zero. We always say zero waste is a journey. It's always a journey more than a destination. We just want to make sure that people understand what zero waste really is all about, and the direction that they need to go in in order to achieve that. My apologies. So my journey, so this is me at the age of about 14, 15. I started out in the recycling industry. So that's where I was. My dad started a recycling company, and we were doing recycling for one of the paper mills here in BC. And so now today, we're working with organizations to help them do policies and create programs around reuse and reduction. So far cry from the recycling start that we had. Which is great. So just recently we worked with the Scouts of Canada. So we approved three of their courses, three of their kind of workshops, I would say, not courses, that they will be hosting for their groups. So one's a Fix It workshop, which is fantastic. It's about extending the life of a product. The other one is looking for understanding where your products are coming from. And another one involves how to reduce the amount of waste created when they do their camping trips. So I think these are great and fantastic classes or workshops, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they get along with them. We're working with the College of Algonquin. We're working with them on their design jam. So their design jam is to establish a project or objective, and this year it's around zero waste. We'll be working with them closely to create solutions and define that problem, and then establish policies, communication strategy to develop the product or the service that will solve the problem that's been developed. So right now we're in the problem development stage, and it's a 15-week program. We're definitely still working with government, so we've been writing a lot of letters lately and trying to work with government, particularly around extended producer responsibility, making sure that those programs start to move more in the direction of zero waste. So right now they focus solely on, most of them focus solely on recycling and then burning of the materials that they can't recycle. So we're trying to move those programs towards looking at reduction of waste, reuse, and just changing the system altogether, because right now our taxpayers are paying for it. We pay for it when we buy something at the store. We want to make sure that those dollars go towards real solutions and not just simply trying to just look at only recycling. So we also have our zero waste education program, so our fundamentals program. So that started last August, and we're about to launch our Zero Waste Associates program, both of which we're about to go through this we're going through the Eco Canada certification program. So we're hoping to be able to complete that hopefully this year. I'm just waiting to hear back on the timeline for that process, but that will be exciting once Eco Canada is able to certify our programs. We'll be doing a food prep program, and also we're working more closely on our certification programs. So Zero Waste Canada has a number of certification programs that we developed. So the first one was a facility certification. So that could be any type of facility. That includes schools, municipal facilities, manufacturing facilities, really could be anything that's got a fixed location. We also have a event certification to be able to certify an event as being a zero waste event. And we're also in the process of looking to do a construction certification. So we've been engaged with a few organizations, so Metro Vancouver, the City of Vancouver, Van City, and Lighthouse, and we're working together to develop a certification for construction sites to be able to reduce the amount of waste developed at a construction sites and to reduce the volume of waste through reuse, repurposing, or recycling. All of our courses are geared towards our certification program. So when you take the fundamentals course, it's really a foundation for moving into a consulting aspect of zero waste, which would be the Zero Waste Associates course, which is geared to launch at the end of October. So the Zero Waste Associates course is quite a big course. It's probably about four sections, and I would want to say it's about 20 hours of content, at least, with quizzes, and at the end there's going to be a project that will need to be completed. Oh, and LEDCOR, sorry, the construction certification we're also working with LEDCOR. So we've got LEDCOR, Metro Vancouver, Van City, City of Vancouver, and HSR, Zero Waste, Zero Waste Canada are all working to develop that certification program. And hopefully we'll be able to pilot it by March. That's the idea. And then after that, we'll be able to offer that to all construction sites to be able to go through the program and meet the certification. Yeah, and perfect. Thank you very much for your time. Is there any questions?
We definitely do have a few questions that have come through, Jamie. I'm just going to pull our question screen up. And we at Eco Canada are definitely looking forward to seeing your program become fully certified and working with Zero Waste Canada going forward too. So that's exciting steps forward for us as well. One of the questions that's come through here is, what are the top 3 household waste reduction strategies you recommend?
Oh, very good question. I think that the best idea is to, one, try and buy bulk, obviously, and try and use things as long as possible. So when it comes to um, there's kitchen waste. So when you're buying your food, you want to buy bulk. There's farmers markets, but really what I try and look at is when I'm purchasing just anything, I always try and purchase quality over price. So make sure that I'm buying something that's not going to break, that's going to last a long time. I try not to throw things out just because it's the fad. I also buy a lot of used products. So anything durable, I find, is there's no reason why you can't buy it used. Like when it comes to anything you want in your life, that's a durable product. If it's gear for going camping, gear for going, you want to go do an athletic sport, almost anything can be bought used, and it's usually things that are sold used are usually the highest quality products. Um, sorry, I can't stress enough about buying and selling used and high quality, because if you buy a high quality product, one, it has a very great resale value, and when you buy used, you're buying that high quality. Again, if you don't want it afterwards, you can just resell it and just keep that in the loop. And it doesn't come with packaging. Used doesn't come with packaging. That's awesome. That's my favorite part. When someone gives me something, a gift, they give me a gift that's used, it doesn't it doesn't come with any of the packaging.
Those are great tips. I love those.
Oh, and sorry, I'm gonna keep going on that one a second because I just thought I'm thinking more. I haven't been a new dad for a while, but if you're a parent, reusable diapers, 100%. When we went with reusable cloth diapers for our children, the amount of waste you're saving is phenomenal. Like it's amazing, and it's not a challenge. It's actually so much easier to use reusable diapers than disposable ones. I found it made things so much easier when I could just wash them instead of having to worry about running out.
I have been a cloth diaper mom myself. I would add to that that they're also a lot cuter than
Yeah,
disposable diapers.
they are. I love them. You don't even need pants to just walk around in their colorful diaper. I love
Exactly.
it.
And there's even a great market for used cloth
Yes,
diapers
we
too.
bought we bought most of our cloth diapers used. It's fantastic, saved us a fortune, and also in the end we ended up reselling them or don't giving some of them away to our friends. They're still good. It's just we don't want to talk, like, this is an important topic because in Europe they were doing studies. They do studies in their community about what's in the waste stream, and then they address each topic. And diapers is always coming up as almost number one every time, either infant or adult, actually. So it's a huge thing to focus on, even though not everybody's a parent and may not understand that value, but it's very huge. And to know that the technology has come a long way, that they're not just a piece of cloth that you have to put together with a bobby pin on your own. They're very much like a regular diaper.
Yeah, there's a big learning curve, but I think the benefits in the end outweigh everything. So,
100%.
um, fantastic. So we have another question here. How do I get involved at an international level?
Oh, it's awesome. So you can just connect with me, and I'll try and connect you to the right groups for sure, because I'm very much so I'm on the board and on many committees, so I can definitely direct you into that space.
Great. So maybe we can drop your email address or contact
Yeah,
information in the chat there for the attendees.
absolutely.
That'd be fantastic. How can the zero waste approach be strengthened upstream? That's a great question.
Oh, that is fantastic. I hate to give it too much publicity, but there's so much push right now for extended producer responsibility, and everybody's glomming onto that. So nationally, internationally, One way or the other, they're either fighting it or they're embracing it. And when they fight it, usually they end up embracing it eventually. So that's why I'm talking about it right now. One of the major issues that I've always seen with these programs is, one, um, they're great for consolidating the industries together, but they're not so great for moving things upstream. So they're usually focused on just taking over the recycling industry, so just doing what status quo and providing data back. So they have the reporting system. But what we need to do is push these programs, because a lot of areas they're not going away, but push these programs to look closely at reuse and refill. We definitely need to do that. When the pandemic hit, I was the first person to say, we need to bring in, before it hit, I was always saying, bring in our own containers, let us refill, like, rah, rah, we have to be able to do that. And then the pandemic hit, and I quickly realized that, what? As environmentalists, we've been asking for too little. We've been begging for industry and companies to let us bring our own containers to fill up. And it's not, they're trying to sell us a service. They should be having their own network. So we have to push these organizations to have their own systems of reuse and refill that we can take part in, instead of putting all the onus on an individual to feel like they need to kind of meekly ask the store attendant if they can use their own container. It should just be widespread, and it shouldn't be on the consumer. It should be on the service provider to have that network established and develop that reuse and refill system. And then when we talk about upstream, we want warranties that actually work, that last a long time, where it's not just expected that it gets tossed out, but actually gets fixed by the manufacturer when something breaks on their money. It makes it easy for the consumer to be able to have that happen. So all these things are very important for that.
Maybe a follow-up to that. What efforts that you're aware of are going into the production process to reduce waste or the toxic effects of that waste?
It really depends on the industry. So various industries are taking on in different strides. I'd have to know kind of what industry you're talking about, so I can speak towards that, because some really aren't doing anything and some are trying hard to either reduce their toxicity, or at the minimum they're trying to reduce their waste through their outputs, because that's saving them money in the end.
Do you have any examples of industries you think are doing a great job in this area?
Oh man, I don't want to give, at this point, I don't want to give any industry credit for that, because I don't think they're doing enough. But what I would say is, there are, I promote a lot of local stuff, so there's a lot of reuse organizations coming up for refill that are connecting with restaurants and stuff. So that's great. So it's not necessarily the restaurants that are doing it, but they are starting to tag on to it. I like the idea of the loop network. So for retailers, so it's basically refilling name brand products in refillable containers, which is important because they put out a lot of volume. The niche markets, they're great and they're leading the way, but they don't have the impact as, say, one of the bigger name brands would have if they were to switch over. So you see that happening. But again, those are only for like the big name brands. So we're trying to make sure that those programs, like the Loop program, are accessible for the smaller producers as well.
Fantastic. We have another question that came in. So what strategies are companies using to reduce their plastic?
Good question. So we always, when we go into an organization, so I'll just take our steps that we use, and it'll be part of our course that'll take you through the step, is a lot of it's education. So the first thing we always do is educate kind of the lead on the project. So who's interested in reducing the waste or the plastic in the first place? So identify that person, educate them on what zero waste is. So what is acceptable. So plastics, to me, plastics aren't inherently bad. They are bad because the industry has abused it. So they've abused with single-use plastics, pushing it everywhere, making everything covered in plastic, and just creating a plastic world. But if we were responsibly managing plastics, and they were making things that were supposed to last a long time, and we didn't throw them out in the garbage the next day, it wouldn't be such a big issue. But the problem is that they're making everything disposable and breaking, so it's a problem. So what we do is we educate our client on what that looks like, and then we do an assessment. So they have to assess their whole facility and their process and understand what's being generated, where's it going, and how's it being handled, and then work backwards from there to see, okay, where are the issues and how are we able to minimize that. So we can see a lot of people avoiding plastics through reusable containers is a big one, so even reusable packaging for shipping. So when a manufacturer receives their materials, they're receiving it in bulk. They're receiving it, it could be in a plastic container, but that plastic container is reusable and they're sending it right back. So trying to really work with their suppliers and minimize the amount of plastics that are coming through from their suppliers. That's pretty fantastic. So we have an organization that's on the road to zero waste. They're fantastic. I'll give them a shout out. It's they're called Earnest Ice Cream. So they have for instance, their ice cream sold in glass pints that are reusable, and they can be returned and they get refilled. And they do a whole lot of other great things in the back end to minimize the amount of waste that's being generated from their actual suppliers too.
Thanks, Jamie. There's a lot of questions coming in now, which is great. I think everyone's really engaged with what you've been sharing with us. So one question that came through is paying for a recycling service like TerraCycle a good idea?
um, it's as long as we're able to um, follow the trail. We always say follow the trail, so understand what's happening to your product. So yeah, it's good because if there's no other alternative, and that's what you're deeming as the only option, then what you're doing is you're internalizing your cost. So you're giving it to TerraCycle, and if they have a process to manage that material in a way that you approve of, recycling, for instance, would be the best way. Then you're internalizing that cost. So even if it costs you a lot of money, okay, because what that's going to do is down the road, if you find a solution to reduce that waste, now you're saving money, right? Now you're actually showing a benefit to cutting that waste out or changing it to a reusable product. If you look at the cost and you decide to, we're going to find a reusable product right away, perfect. But besides that, if it's the only alternative, then what you end up doing is, like I said, it's internalizing those costs.
Next question here is there a statistic that shows the impact of diverting compost from landfills? What do you have to say for many buildings and schools who don't have compost bins available?
Yeah, composting, it's interesting because composting to me is like considered the oldest form of recycling. It's like and it's very new since people have been talking about it. For instance, myself in the recycling industry, we only started talking about composting, I want to say about 8 years now. So that's not a long time when I've been in the industry for almost over 30 years. Um, I think everybody should have composting at a minimum, and every community should have composting. So it's always surprising, not surprising because I see it so often, but it is surprising how simple composting is, that some communities don't have it, or many communities don't have it. So I think it's very important. And if you're a school, it could be a learning process, because it's a super huge education, and schools usually have the space to have their own compost. So it's not expensive process. So I really think that it's important for everybody to get on board with composting. Having said that, composting again isn't the ultimate solution. So we need to make sure we're looking at food waste reduction, because food waste is a huge issue. So we're wasting like 30-40% of our food that gets grown, and that's significant when we're shipping it around the world. You ship your banana around the world and you let it go bad. That's that's significant because that banana has incurred a huge carbon footprint from growing it to shipping it. So there's so much we need to do around food waste reduction. But yes, ultimately we also have to, at the end of for the waste food that you can't do anything with, then composting for sure. But there's animal feed, like even that's not good for consuming for humans. We should set up a strong network to be able to turn it into animal feed because again, that's going to be the next phase before composting.
For
Hope
sure.
I
I
answered
think
that
there's,
question.
I think that was good. I think there's also like opportunities for, buildings or schools to use compost in productive ways, like have a community garden or a school garden, right? And you can be teaching kids at the same time about the value of growing their food and how to improve soil and all of those things as well.
100%. I agree with you 100%. It's just like recycling. If we don't use the recycled product, we don't buy things with recycled content. Same with composting, right? You can make all the compost in the world, but if you're not generating markets, so if you're not making at home garden, if you're not making that on-site garden, where's that compost going to go at the end of the day? So you have to add value to drive the markets, and to do that, you have to be, actively seeking those products.
Thank you, Jamie. I think there's a good few questions we want to get through here. They're really good. I love this one. So one of our listeners has said that they see some information regarding the use of mushrooms in the fight to recycle and eliminate single-use plastic weight. How valid or accurate is that strategy?
Yeah, so I saw that, I think you're talking about the technology where they use not mushrooms, but the silica from mushrooms. So the roots that the mushrooms create that are super strong, they grow that to form into different types of containers and stuff that can, at the end of the day, be composted. So I saw that about 10 years ago at a conference, and I thought it was really interesting, and I'm surprised it hasn't made it more mainstream because it just seemed like such an easy business model to do, but maybe not. Um, I'm always for reuse. I think that's these products are better than a plastic, for instance, and I don't know if there's any added chemicals into that product either, or what it looks like at the end of the day. So I can't really say to that piece. But if it is 100% compostable, then it's good. The only problem is it's still going through a process of growing. So there's still resources that go into that. So it's not zero resources going into making that product. So if you're still just making it into a single use product that you're going to throw out at the end of the day, there's still lots of resources that go into that. There's manpower, right? You have to grow food to feed people, to then work in a factory that makes those products that you're just gonna toss out at the end of the day. So I really still try and keep the focus on durable, reusable products over anything that's single use or disposable, regardless of the material it's made out of.
Great. We've got a quick question. Someone wanted to know the name of the ice cream company that you'd mentioned.
Ernest Ice Cream. Yeah.
Next one is a great question. It's about travel. So people sometimes kind of get into relaxation mode when they're on vacation, and it's a bit easier to follow less non-environmentally friendly behaviors or consumption patterns. Are there some tips to engage people to follow a less wasteful style while they're traveling?
Oh, good question. I think planning ahead is essential. So knowing where you're going, and also sometimes, like I always sometimes, actually always not sometimes, when I go traveling, we usually pack our own containers, even though it takes up some space. Just because if we're going to a restaurant, we want to take takeout, or we want to do, we have leftovers and we want to take it home with us. We always have a package. Even when I'm traveling, we always have a container with us. Um, I always try to, when I'm traveling, I try to stay in a place that has a kitchen so I can do grocery shopping, and then try to minimize my waste through just bulk and doing it that way. Also saves a lot of costs too. There's tons of costs you save by just making your own meals when you're traveling. bring home your waste. That's another thing that we try to do. So I don't know how internationally people like that, but me and my friend we went to Dom and did a backpacking trip. And our goal was, if we created waste, we brought it home with us. So we tried to, we were backpacking. So you could imagine we were trying to reduce the amount of waste that we were doing. But we had our own plates, we had our own forks, we had all that stuff already. So when we went to like the local markets, we would use our own stuff. We wouldn't accept their styrofoam plates. We wouldn't accept their cutlery, just all that type of stuff. And usually when you're traveling, it's around food packaging and different types of packaging. So and camping is a big one because they'll have those pre-made, ready to serve um, uh, food that you or dehydrated food that's all in non-recyclable packaging. That's so frustrating. So for that, I just try to make my own mixes with soups and stuff.
They're great tips. I think you touched on it when you said markets too, because markets are a great place where you can sometimes avoid those packaged goods, right? You can get fresh food right into your hands with less
Absolutely.
waste. Let's see what the next question is here. So I have a city compost and do home compost. That means none of their kitchen waste goes to the landfill, which is great. I take my own
Nice.
bags when I go shopping and give priority to non-packed vegetables and reuse a lot of things and paper at home. And they're willing to do more. Planning to switch back to soap for bathing to save on soap bottles, which goes to the landfill. So that's a great comment on some of the things that our listeners are doing to take a more zero waste approach.
And one thing I want to stress is, as a consumer, like it's important to like writing letters and getting involved and trying to change policies sometimes is really important because as a consumer, it's a huge burden on the everyday consumer to try to be as zero waste as they possibly can. And the communities realize it doesn't want to put that stress on people. Like do the best you can, recognize what's important and celebrate your wins. If you bring your reusable bag 90% of the time and 10% of the time you forget, don't beat yourself up about it, right? You're at least you recognize that a reusable bag is important and it should be done. But because it's not mainstream, it's so easy to forget these little things. I even get caught where I'm somewhere and I need to do something or my kid's really thirsty or something and I forgot to bring a reusable water bottle, right? So what do, right? What are your options? So really don't stress if you aren't 100% perfect. It's not about being perfect. It's a journey. It's just about recognizing what's important and kind of just making small wins and improvements.
That's great. Yeah, we had a couple other comments come through of what our listeners today are doing to take a more zero waste approach too. So we've got people who are trying to avoid things with plastic wrapping, using their own water bottle, like you mentioned, and containers, buying bulk, and diminishing the amount of meat because they believe it's an industry that can be wasteful and harmful in some ways as well.
100%.
And uh, and one of our attendees wants to build an eco house with all the knowledge that they amass to lessen waste as much as possible. So that's a fantastic goal to have.
That's awesome. No, I agree with all those points and yeah, the meat consumption is a contentious piece because so many people just love meat. I was a huge meat eater till about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I slowly started cutting back on my meat consumption. I'm still an omnivore, so I definitely don't cut it out altogether. At home, mostly I'm pretty much 100% vegetarian. We enjoy vegan meals. I love a good vegan meal. Feels so good when you can have that, and when it tastes great too. But definitely not completely vegetarian or vegan. I still, when I'm out with friends or family at their houses, I'll still have something that's meat based.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Oh, we got one more question that came through here. It might be more of a comment. Yeah, so someone's saying that they had the question about zero waste approach could be strengthened upstream, and they'd like to support zero waste in outreach activities and policy analysis, decision making, and brainstorming on some issues. So I think we'll connect you with this person directly, Jamie, because they are also located in France. So welcome from France.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
Bonjour, bienvenue.
and yeah, I think that's all of the questions we have today. We can give everyone a minute or two if they want to pop in another question. If you want to use the chat feature, just use the drop down and you can select send questions to staff. You can also just throw a comment to entire audience there if you want to add any more contributions to the conversation. And in the meantime, I would just like to, oh, we do have one more question here. Do you think it's better to shop for local meats or just go vegetarian?
I would say probably just go vegetarian is gonna win out if you look at the footprint for local meats. But like I said, I'm not gonna try and change anyone's diet. I always say everything in moderation and just limit. Know that meat has a very large carbon footprint for sure.
That's all the questions we have so far.
Yeah, but
Jamie,
oh, sorry. One thing about local meat, though, one thing I want to say is it is good because you're able to know where it's coming from, and if it's if it's no hormones involved and things like that. That's before I started cutting it out. That's what I would always look for, was making sure there was no hormones products used and things like that. So yeah.
excellent. We got a couple of people saying, please drop your email in the chat so they can, or just if you want to just tell everyone who's listening in what your email address is or how they can get in touch with you. That would be
Yeah, I
fantastic.
can try and drop it in the chat here. How do I use this chat? Oh, there we go.
And while Jamie's putting that in, I just wanted to say thank you, Jamie, for the really informative presentation today. Thanks to everyone who was listening in, all of our attendees. We hope you enjoyed this presentation. We hope you have some great takeaways that you can implement. I know I sure do. So I will read out Jamie's address here just for anyone who's listening post session. So it's JAMIE, Jamie at hsrzerowaste.com. And thanks again. Really appreciate all of the engagement we've had today and this wonderful presentation that you did for us, Jamie.
So thank you everybody for having me here and for all the great questions and discussion.
Excellent. And if we always have live webinars coming up at Eco Canada, feel free to head over to eco.ca and see what is coming up in the next little bit. And thanks again for joining us.